Of course, this whole speech of developing countries and developed countries is a metaphor. Because what does the word mean? A developing country. What does the word developing mean? The word in itself. A developing means? Continuous, yes. We are building a house. I am baking a cake. I am running a race, right? I am developing a country. That's those poor people in the developing world. What did Sweden, what did we decide to call ourselves? A developed country. What does developed mean? It means done. I have baked my cake. I am not open for any new suggestions on things we should put in the cake because the cake is already done, okay? I am building, and the house is now built. Now, if we want to change the house, we have to tear something down and then put the new things in. I have run the race. I have finished my race. From a creativity point of view, what does it mean to stop running? Because running is momentum. I am running the race. There's moment, there's momentum, there's change, right? What happens if you say to yourself, I have now reached the finish line? Well, you slow down, right? You slow down. What happens when you slow down? You lose momentum. What happens when you lose momentum? But from a creativity point of view, that's death, creative death. I'm not saying that the developed world stopped, but we absolutely, definitely, mentally slowed down. And I go back and forth a lot. 50% of my time I spend in developed countries. 50% of the time I spend in developing countries. I am going to Sweden tonight. Sweden and Switzerland. Then I'm going to India. I go back and forth like this. And it's amazing the difference in attitude and energy in the developed world where we are now trying to protect what we have instead of building something. And of course, it's easy to say, well, that's because the developed world is almost done. I don't think Penny Law would agree. I don't think any politician should agree because the developed world is so far away from being even close to being done. We are not living in an environmentally sustainable world where everyone is happy and well-trained and lives harmonious lives. We are so far away from that. So how dare we say that we are done? How dare we even use the word developed? But the whole metaphor of developed and developing country is a metaphor for developing companies and developed companies. 1 year ago, little more than 1 year ago, I was in India when they launched this car. I have touched this car, the Tata Nano car. You heard about this car? 100,000 rupees, 2,000 US dollars. Now this, I think, 25 years from now, this picture will be as symbolic as the picture of the Sputnik. I showed this car in, actually, when they launched this car, there was one Swedish newspaper who wrote about it. No one else did. One. The journalist wrote two things. How about safety? Look at that piece of crap. We have Volvo. I would like to call him and correct him. Sorry, we lost Volvo 15 years ago to the Americans, and they are just now selling it to the Chinese, so shut up, okay? This is not an unsafe car. This is the safest motorcycle ever built. Because Mr. Tata had the idea when he saw 4 Indians on a motorbike saying, how can I live in a country, the 21st century, and families are living in such unsafe communication environment. There must be possible to build a more safe communication. And he's not competing with a Volvo. He's competing of a price of a pretty darn cheap motorcycle. This is the safest motorcycle ever built. I also interviewed a Japanese journalist who was there, and he said, it's not Toyota who's afraid of this car, it's Honda and Yamaha. This is a huge innovation in the car industry, not because it's in safety, but because how much car you can build for so little money. This is a developing car company. Now look at the American car companies. Would you call that the pinnacle of innovation in the industry right now? Well, not the traditional American car companies, at least. The only innovation I see there is how can I get more money from my government not to go bankrupt? This is going to be a symbol of innovation from developing countries, just like the picture of the Sputnik became a symbol of the space race that went from nothing to the moon in 15 years. Yes, also by the Americans. I'm not saying we are not going to innovate from now on. I am saying suddenly there are going to be much more people, companies, and countries who are going to start innovating, and we need to start looking at that. We need to start seeing that. Now here, I was talking about highest buildings. Here are the 4 highest buildings in the world that has been constructed in the last 10 years. Now, what's the common denominator between these countries? Well, in the 19th century, Europe had the highest buildings in the world. In the 20th century, the Americans built the highest buildings in the world. But in the 21st century, who has been building the highest buildings in the world? Where's this one? Malaysia. Where's this one? Taiwan. Where's the next one? Shanghai Financial Center. And the last one is in Dubai. Common denominator, developing countries. And I don't care if we're talking about internet bank, or if we're talking about mobile services, or we're talking construction, or we're talking car industry, or what industry we are talking about. Now developing and innovation is being also done in developing countries, even being led, more advanced in the developing countries. And the developed world is not looking. It's like a huge wave of innovation coming from this side, and we are focused on that. We are not seeing this. There's an Icelandic word which is called hemskur. Hemskur is an old, 1,000 years old word. It's Viking language. Hemskur means idiot. Now a hemskur was an Icelandic Viking who had a farm, and if you had a farm, you were supposed to build a ship, rent some guys, go south, go to Europe, and steal as much as you could, and then come home. Yes, you should steal gold and beautiful women, but most importantly, you should steal ideas. Because then you could come home to your farm on Iceland, and you can use all those innovative ideas that you have been seeing down on the continent. Now, if you had a farm and you didn't do that, you were a hemskur. You were an idiot. My message to you, my point with this speech, is to ask yourself, regardless if you're which company you're working for, when you look at what everyone else is innovating and discovering and coming up with, are you seeing that? Are you looking? And are you looking in all places, not only looking at what's being done in the West? Are you a developing person, or are you a developed person? And trust me, I have met professors who are developed person, who do the same lecture they did 10 years ago. Doesn't mean that because you live in a developing country, you're a developing person. There are super developing persons in developed countries. There are extremely developed persons in developing countries. But there's a higher percentage of developing people in developing countries. And for you who said that Singapore is a developed country, please ask yourself, is this really what the word you should use on a country? I was choosing between Singapore and South Korea when I was choosing where to live. And the interesting thing is that if you go to South Korea and you ask them, is South Korea a developing country or developed country? I am yet to meet a South Korean who says that South Korea is a developed country. Now, South Korea is the 10th largest economy in the world. The average salary is 30% higher than it is in Sweden. They are part of OECD. They are, by any definition you would like to have, a developed country. But they refuse to put that word in their mouth. And when I ask them, Why? They say, we have not beaten Japan yet. So learn from South Korea. Never become a developed country, never become a developed company, and never ever become a developed person. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fredrik Haren. Thank you. Great speech.